Hello there. Welcome on this podcast episode. I'm going to talk about rising above one man journey to conquer ED. I will deep dive into the challenges and triumph of a man determined to defeat ED. So join us as we uncover the emotional battles, the groundbreaking treatment, and the unwavering perseverance that led to rekindling of passion, confidence, the story of love, courage, and transformation. I'll see you on the inside. This podcast is for you, the modern man. I'm Dr. Truong, your host. I'm an intimate health medical doctor and best-selling author of the book Erectile Dysfunction Fix. I'll do a deep dive into sexual health and performance and how it affects men of all ages and backgrounds. So let's get started, and be sure to visit my website at sexualhealthformenpodcast.com for more information and resources from the show. See you on the inside. Hello, everyone. Hello, other modern man. Today, I have a great episode for you on the story of a great guy, Gaylen Wilson, and how he has overcome ED to live his second life again. And we're going to hear his story. And I'm so glad that Gaylen is here with me today. How are you doing today,
I'm
Gaylen?
I'm just doing great, Dan. Dr.
Great.
Ann, I
Oh, call
couldn't
me
do
call
much
me
better.
Dr. Ann. That's fine. So Galen is actually an admin of the two largest Facebook group on erectile dysfunction discussion, and he's going to tell us his story today and why he does what he does. But the focus I want to go through today is that there is a light for a man living with ED, even as severe case such as Galen. So Galen, just tell us about how you first have had knew that you had ED or something was going on with your bedroom performance.
Okay. Well, we're going to go back a little further than that. I was married at 20 years old and had my first child at 21. And my wife and I had four children by the time we were 26. So we enjoyed sex quite a bit. Anyway, we had a very active sex life throughout our marriage. I was one of those high tech workers that you heard about getting laid off after the September 11th thing happened. And between all the stresses of that and other items, that marriage ended. And about that same time, I had developed ED at 44 years old.
At
And
44 years old, I
at
was going to
44.
ask you that. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and so I was kind of unusual because I immediately, the second problem happened, I was at the doctor saying, "Give me some of that new medicine." Viagra had only been out, oh, I don't know, 2 or 3 years at the time, maybe four. But
Did you have high blood pressure or high
no,
cholesterol or diabetes at all at that
no,
time?
no,
Nothing at all.
no. Occasionally over my life, my triglycerides would get a little high and my cholesterol would inch up, but it never got into the bad range.
Okay.
And so, and I didn't have any cardiovascular issues at all.
Okay, so you went to the doctor.
Right. So
Okay.
went to the doctor, and he was a little reluctant at the time. General practitioners a lot of times don't know as much as ED about ED as they need to know. They're not trained in it. So that's where a specialist makes all the difference. But I was able to talk him into a prescription. At the time, Viagra was very expensive for me. I still had four children at home, trying to raise them, and so I ended up cutting the 100 milligrams down to 25, and it was just miraculous for me uh, at the
So
first.
because of how
And
expensive it was,
right,
you cut down the dose. But let's
right,
backtrack a little bit.
okay,
And you were mentioning, oh well, I went to see the doctor, and you have to kind of talk him into it. A lot of times, it's also the doctor's experience of treating ED, but also the doctor's comfort level of
mm,
talking about sexuality as well. So
right.
we're talking about the year 2000 because that Viagra came out in 1998. So this is around what 2000 or late 90s. Is that right? Or
Yeah, yeah,
okay,
hmm
yeah,
yeah.
right. So
It was 22 years ago.
right. So like around 2000, like Viagra came out in
Yeah,
1990. At that time, God Lord, 23 years ago, we were still not even focusing on pain and so forth at that time. So it's the point I want to point out is from a physician perspective is their comfort level as well in talking about the issue of sexuality as well as their training as well. So whatever training the specialty we kind of hang in that lane. It's like I don't do open heart surgeries. I don't
Right.
well versed in that. So we like to kind of stay in the lane that we are specialized. At that time, did he do any blood work or anything before you got the medication?
I don't remember him taking any blood. It was very short meeting. Gave me the prescription and off I went. And
Right, and insurance didn't cover that, right?
no, at the time, no, insurance wasn't covering that. And in hindsight, I know now enough to know that he should have taken blood tests to check me for heart issues and other underlying issues rather than just writing me the script.
Right, right. Should have,
So anyway,
like an EKG should have been done, some blood work just to look at your hormones level,
right.
your inflammation level, your blood sugar level, your cholesterol level. Just basic things like that. That is
Mhm.
actually insurance will cover. But yes, so you got the prescription because how much it costs, you split it in quarters.
Right. And so anyway, 2 years after developing ED, I caught me a 17-year younger wife. She had three little ones. So I had raised a family. All my kids from my first marriage were grown. And so I was off to raising my second family. And
And how old were you then?
I was 46.
46? Okay.
Uh-huh. And she was
Mm-hmm.
29. She was a full grown woman. So
Mm-hmm. Right.
and so anyway, we had a very, very well matched libido. And we got, with sildenafil, you have to pretty much plan sex. And so we just planned sex every morning and every night, 14 times a week. Uh, and sometimes
So,
more.
were you able to get erection without the meds at all?
It was touch and go. It got to I could once in a while, but everything was working so well that I usually didn't try it without the meds,
Okay,
just because,
right,
it
right,
was working perfectly. I had a full
right,
active
right,
sex life.
right. Now, did you have morning erection at all?
That was 22 years ago. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not
So the whole point I'm trying to make is Galen had ED 22, probably 24 years, right? Because then that time you were 2 years into the
right.
ED, so at least 23 years of ED. And let's backtrack a little bit in that what I'm trying to say is that when you first notice you have ED, notice, see if you still have morning erection or nighttime erection, because an average man will have about 3 to 6 erection. And if you're having morning erection or nighttime erection, then
Right.
things are still working. Things are
Right.
still working. You just need to kind of clear the plumbing a little bit more. And again, that's where the blood work comes in
Right.
to play. And looking at, is it a high blood pressure, a high cholesterol, or diabetes, or even stress? So at 44 years old, at that time, probably the stress of raising your kid on your own,
Right.
and like you said, you were laid off or something
Yeah.
as
Yeah. I
well
lost
too,
the career,
right?
and
Yep.
yeah.
You had the career change, the divorce. You were 44. Your testosterone was probably dropping at that time. The stress hormone depresses the testosterone as well. So that I would predict at that time at 44, probably testosterone and stress play a role in what you're noticing with
Right. And
your
I
erection.
I also I also have battled weight my entire adult life from
Mm.
30 on. And so I was running between 20 and 40 pounds overweight on and off over the last 22 years. So
Right. And, and
I'm
and how
sure
much
that
did you
has
weigh
a
at that time? Were you How much did you
uh
weigh? You remember?
seems like when I met my current wife, I had been on the low carb diet and lost a lot of weight. I think I was down to about 200, which at 5'9" I should be about 180. And so I was in fairly decent shape at that
Okay.
time.
So at the time that you had ED, which before you met your second wife, you were maybe around 230.
Yeah,
You
two,
said
220 to 230 is
220 to
probably what I ran.
230.
Hmm.
Right. 220, 230, you're 5'9",
Yeah,
right? You're 5'9". So
right.
so you're absolutely right. I mean, that put you in the obesity range,
Correct. Yeah,
and that
I imagine
certainly
my
play a role
BMI
into
was
that.
around 30, at,
Right.
above 30,
Right,
and
right.
so
The BMI was above 30. So, just kind of looking at 23 years ago, we kind of identify some risk factors that will put you to ED, which is the overweight. Probably didn't have time to exercise because you're so busy working and raising the kids, right?
right, right.
Yeah, and that's probably why you were overweight, and then the stress, and then low testosterone. At least at that time,
Hmm.
that we can
Yeah, I never did
speculate.
get my testosterone checked until within the last couple of years, so I never knew what it was. I mean, I
Hmm.
still had the libido, so I'm kind of guessing it was probably okay, but I'm sure
Uh
it
huh.
wasn't what it was when I was 25.
Exactly. And oftentimes testosterone start dipping around mid 30s. When you're more stressed, it dipped a lot
Right,
more than just 1% a year. So get back to you met your beautiful, hot wife who's 29 years old and you're 46. Okay.
yeah,
Sex was good, it was often, but you needed some medication, to be able to perform. And at that time,
right,
so yeah, but it did the job. It did the job. But during this whole time, your doctor's been giving you a prescription, right?
right.
Yeah, and no blood work,
No blood work.
no blood work, no EKG,
Nope.
no heart scan to take a look at your heart. So if you had known that maybe your testosterone level was a little low at that time,
It could have been,
it
yes.
it would have definitely would have been something to look at. So yeah, so continue on. So at that time, did you feel? I mean, how obviously the sexuality of relationship was important and integral.
Right. Yeah. Well, you could even probably saying I was borderline addicted to it. I've since found that 14 times a week is kind of like way above average. And,
Uh huh.
but we continued that for 12 years until in the winter of 2014, I had a virus attack my heart and gave me congestive heart failure. And so that right away cut the frequency of sex way down. From 14 times a week to maybe 2 or 3 times a week. And, but we were still able to keep going for another couple of years until my heart just continued to deteriorate. I had problems when I went into AFib, and when you go into AFib, when your heart's weak, you're a sick man really fast. And so I kept having to get cardioverted back into rhythm, and I
Right.
I
Well,
was a
it was
mess.
it was also contraindicated, or you shouldn't be taking ED med at that time
Well, nobody
when you're in
ever told
AFib.
me
Yeah.
nobody ever told me stop taking the Viagra, which they might have should have. But by the time I was in AFib, I wasn't capable of having sex. I was just my body wasn't getting enough oxygen and enough yeah oxygen to
Mhm.
survive or
Mhm.
to put out that kind of effort. And so for the next year and a half, things just got worse and worse. In January and February of 2017, I spent 16 days in jail or jail
In jail.
in the hospital.
Yeah.
I don't know what Freudian
No,
slip that
correct.
came from.
16 days in the hospital, not in jail.
Not in jail, um, in the hospital, very close to death. My they kept trying to change my medications. They tried nitrates on me. The nitrates gave me severe headaches. You know, which I was just scared to death that they were going to put me on the nitrates, which would have completely eliminated me taking the sildenafil because of the danger of the low blood pressure with the
Mhm.
nitrates. And so they ended up, and I don't know why I was so afraid of it because my heart wasn't up to making love anyway. But
Mm.
they ended up getting me better enough that they went ahead and released me and sent me home. And kind of my mindset at the time is okay, they're sending me home to die. And so I went to bed mid February and binge watched Netflix for 2 months, just waiting to die. And then one Saturday morning in mid April, I sat up in bed and I said, "No, damn it! If I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die doing something I love." And so I got up and I drug my little oxygen. I was on oxygen 24 hours a day. I
Mm.
drug my little oxygen bottle out to the backyard and started planting a vegetable garden. and had my son-in-law come over and rototill me up a big area. And that first day, I spent a couple hours out there, and it was 3 minutes of working and 10 minutes of sitting, sucking air. Um,
Right, right. But let's backtrack a little bit. I
okay.
love the part where you just said, "Well, if I'm gonna die, I'm gonna build my vegetable garden." What was the epiphany? What was the light bulb? Because for 2 months you were just like lying there, gaining weight, couldn't exercise, couldn't do stuff, obviously couldn't have sex, and was in the pit. But what happened?
Yeah.
What was the calling? What
And
was it? A
act
movie you saw or what?
No, I don't remember any certain thing. First of all, I wasn't gaining weight because I was in such bad heart failure. I was in the stage where you they were saying, "Don't lose any more weight. Don't lose
Oh,
any more weight." Because I just
gotcha.
I've always been a beef eater. My wife would fix me a steak. I'd take 2 bites and I was done. And
Mm.
so I was a really sick man. And
Uh huh.
but I've always been kind of a type A personality, not one to sit around and vegetate very much. I always had to be going and doing something. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what it was, is it finally hit me that I was just had given up. And I don't think it was a movie or anything. I think it was just finally I had used the Netflix to not think about the situation for 2 months. And I don't know whether I had a time where I didn't have it on or something and got to thinking about my situation, but I just knew I wasn't going to die that way. If I was going to die, let me get out there and die from heart failure in the middle of the garden.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so,
Yeah. Yeah.
so anyway,
So
after
so you decided that you weren't gonna be feeling sorry for yourself.
right, and believe it or not, that was really good for me because the first couple of days it was just 2 or 3 hours. And then, like the third day, I spent 6 hours out sanding all my shovels and painting the handles and getting all ready. And within 2 weeks, I was completely off the oxygen, both inside and at night, or both outside and inside at night. I had worked myself out of having to have that oxygen as a crutch. And so within 6 weeks after that, I had worked myself into probably as good a shape as I could have been in with my heart as bad as it was.
Well,
And I,
that's interesting. What caused that? Well, I mean, obviously, your mind was powerful. Your
right,
your
right.
mind is
It
healing
was,
your body. Really,
yeah, it
nothing's
was,
changed,
yeah, it was a
right?
change in attitude is what caused it. I had decided that I wasn't going to just give up. And,
Mm-hmm.
I was going to live what little life I had. I thought you know, I was on the transplant list, but I'd only been on it, 3 months by that time. And so there's 12,000 people on that list nationwide, and only 2,500 usable hearts become available every year. So you can read the handwriting on the wall that your chances of getting a heart at a few months on the list are slim, very
Absolutely.
slim.
Well, at that time, you were probably not even thinking about getting a heart. You were just trying
Right. Yeah.
whatever
I
time
was
I have on this earth, I'm gonna enjoy it, right?
right.
And
That's
it's
exactly right.
out of your control. But
Right.
essentially, you made up your mind that you were gonna be lying in your and feeling sorry for yourself within 8 weeks. Like you said, 2 weeks you were off oxygen. 6 weeks you were better. You were moving around. What the power of the mind, the
Right.
power of the mind in healing yourself, and the power of the mind, because nothing changed. You were on oxygen 24/7,
Right.
but you
Exactly.
were able to get off of oxygen, and it's so powerful because we always wonder, what's going on in here that is getting him off of his oxygen. Is it changing his AFib? Is it increasing his heart rate better? Is it extracting out the oxygen better in his lungs? What is going on? And obviously, the mind is the most powerful organ of all, because it drives everything, right? That's why it's at the top of your head and it's surrounded by a thick bone to protect it. And we probably know by 10% of what our brain does. And obviously, in your case, within 8 weeks, you were able to get off of oxygen, and you said that you were in better shape. So what does that mean? You're able to walk better, or what?
Right.
What does that mean?
Before, I couldn't walk out to the mailbox and back without looking for a place to sit down halfway each direction. And, it was like 50 feet up from the house. And, and I was to the point where I'd go out and I'd work for 20, 30 minutes at a time and then take a 5 minute break instead of, work for 3 minutes and take a 15-minute break.
So
And-
during all that time, your activity was just going outside,
right.
planting your vegetable garden. That was it.
Hmm.
You weren't doing anything else.
Right. Right. And so anyway, uh, I had an internal defibrillator, and one night my wife was. I got a wonderful wife that rubs my legs and back every night, and she was rubbing my legs one night, and she got a tingle in her hands, and my whole body jumped up off the bed, and all I remember from it was saying, "Man, I feel funky." And then she's shaking me, said, "What just happened?" And I said, "I don't know." And then we figured out that my defibrillator had gone off
Hmm.
and shocked my heart. And so I should have probably got up and went to the hospital at that point, but I was tired, so I just rolled over and went back to sleep.
Uh-huh.
And I got up. I had a little mouse thing that you could hold over the defibrillator, and it would read it, and then you could put it in a cradle, and it would send it up to Denver, to the
Hmm.
heart doctors. And so I did that the next morning and called them, and they said, "Yeah, your heart rate was 240 beats a minute right before that went off, and it saved your life," because that's where the term "drop dead" comes from. Is if you
Hmm.
had not had that internal defibrillator, you would have been dead on the spot. And so
Hmm.
it had saved my life. And then I went up and they checked me out and they says, "Well, all your blood tests are okay. It looks like it did what it was supposed to do. We'll send you back home." And so on the way back home that night, my heart went back into AFib again, and that
Hmm.
was on a Thursday night. So I called them the next morning, and they says, "Well, we can't arrange for you to get cardioverted until Monday." And so I went back up Monday and got cardioverted again, and then they sent me back home. And later that week, I was back in the hospital up there for another 2 or 3 days. And the doctor kept saying, "Well, your numbers look okay, but I can look at you and tell you you're a very sick man." And
Hmm.
so it was on June 19th of 2018. I set my wife down and told her, "Honey, I'm not going to be here in 2 to 3 months. We need to finish up the plans." We had been to the funeral home and started arrangements, and we need to finish up the plans. And so, of course, she was bawling her eyes out because of that. And a half an hour after I told her that, we got a call from the hospital that there was a heart available. And so we had a little to go bag like a pregnant couple, and we grabbed that,
Hmm.
and off to Denver we went. It was a 3.5 hour drive up there. And that night it was raining and hailing and just an awful storm outside. So it was, we probably drove 100 miles in that rain and hail. And so the waterworks were going outside the car and inside the car, because now my wife had changed from crying because I was leaving to crying because she was excited and scared.
Hmm. Well, now
And
how does that feel going from I'm gonna die
mhm.
to, oh my God, I have a chance to live now. How did that feel?
It was pretty miraculous, and because I did not expect it whatsoever. I'd only been on the list 7 months by that time. And
Mm. That's
so
still a long time. Yeah.
yeah. And so it's almost, I can't almost explain. I was excited and scared because I knew that I had like a 5% chance of dying on the table. But you know, I had just told my wife I was going to die. They told me when they called that the heart was a high risk heart because they had found abnormalities with his kidney, and also they had found track marks where he'd been using intravenous drugs. But they had inspected the heart and it looked healthy. And so I had just told my wife I was not going to be there, so I had to take the flyer and take the
Uh-huh.
chance.
Hmm.
And so next morning at 9 o'clock, I had a 38-year-old heart. He was a 38-year-old that was in snowboarding and inline skating and extreme sports, so he was an athlete. and it's been a super strong heart, and it's been very happy where it's at. So,
Mm.
um,
So that was in 2018 is when you had the heart
right,
transplant.
in June
Gotcha.
20th of 2018,
Uh-huh.
and
Right,
my
right.
wife said, I went in a gray man and came out a white man
Well, you
because
you have a 38-year-old heart.
with
Really
that
a second
38 year
chance
old
on
heart,
life, essentially.
right?
And how old were you then?
I was 62, six,
Oh,
yeah.
62.
I was
Okay.
61, I would turn 62 that August. So, um,
Gotcha. Gotcha.
and so because of my fitness level, I recovered from the heart transplant really quickly. They were going to actually let me out 9 days after transplant, which is almost unheard of.
Yeah.
Uh, they did end up keeping me another 2 weeks because I had very slight rejection that they didn't. They wanted to hit me with some more steroids, and uh, and so they hit me with steroids for 2 more weeks and did 2 more biopsies, and
Mm-hmm.
finally by the third week I had no rejection, and I haven't had any
Mm-hmm.
rejection since. And so
Mm-hmm.
they let me out. Um, it was only about 2 or 3 days once I was out that I was trying sex again, and it worked. I had now had a heart that was pumping the blood I needed, and I was in good enough shape that I could keep going. And so,
Wow, you
I
you
mean,
know it's almost like karma. You were on oxygen. You decided I'm gonna get out and then do all this. Like spend like 8, 10 weeks or so until you get that call of
right,
really improving your fitness, and then you got that call. Imagine
right,
what would have happened if you were just lying in bed and you got that call. You probably would end up having more postoperative complication
right,
because your physical reserve for recovery wasn't as good, and who knows, but that it's almost like karma. And now you got a new heart with better blood flow and better oxygenation, and guess what? Your erection is better, and so I just want to know when you guys had intercourse. When was the last time you guys had intercourse prior to that? Post
oh gosh, it had to been a year.
the
It had to
implant.
been a year and a half, I would guess.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. and
yeah.
and my wife stuck by me through thick and thin. It didn't
Uh,
matter to
that's
her
awesome.
that we were making love or not. She was there for me, and
Yeah,
she was my
that's
rock.
awesome. Yeah, yeah. Well, I think with you was that you and your wife have a very close relationship, very loving, very connected, and a good communication between the two of you.
Right,
And that really helped your journey and what you were going through as well too, and as well as hers.
right. And
Yeah.
we both had mental issues because of everything that was going on, but if anything, it drove us closer together. uh, you know there's a lot. I've heard of guys that got a transplant and their wife left the week afterwards, and
Yes,
it's,
yes,
that's pretty
yeah.
sad.
Right, right,
So,
right. Yeah. So you
so
you were very blessed that you had her.
I was, yeah, both before and after. uh, it, it's been
Absolutely.
wonderful. So,
Yeah. So
so
how did it feel? How did it feel to have intercourse again, have your erection
Oh,
back again?
yeah, it was. I was very, very thankful. Blessed. I felt blessed that first of all, they'd given me a new heart, was going to give me another 20 plus years with my soulmate, and then my sex life came back. And so for the next 2 years or so, things were good. We were making love, probably 3 times a week. Things were working good, and then it started going. By that time I was 64. Things started going downhill over the next year and a half or so, to where by November of 2019, I was we were down to trying to make love twice a week, and I was failing half the time. It just really, I was really, really frustrated at that point. My ED had gotten so bad that it was, the meds weren't working like they were supposed to anymore. And it was at that point that I joined my first erectile dysfunction group. And I immediately started seeing two things. One was that the porn had a big connection to erectile dysfunction. And so that's one of the first things I did, was starting cutting back on my porn consumption, and I did see some improvement in my erections. And then I also saw that guys were having good luck with doing shockwave therapy. And me being the do-it-yourself type guy I am, I got on eBay and ordered a $320 Chinese shockwave therapy machine. It was kind of two things happened all at once. My New Year's resolution was to cut porn completely out of my life, and so I did that. And then I
How
got
many hours were you watching porn at that time before
oh
you quit?
I wasn't I wasn't obsessed with it to the point I would watch it hours a day, but I would say 30 minutes a day, probably.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What was it usually with your wife or what you would it doesn't have to be related to when you're having intercourse or not.
Right. Right. We used to we'd have one time we'd make love, it would be with the movie, and the next time it would be without the movie. And
Hmm.
kind of the compromise we came to.
Hmm.
And I didn't realize how damaging that was to her soul, watching that pornography with me, because she's not a 20 something girl anymore. And and I didn't realize that she felt like she was competing with those girls. I was kind of oblivious to the fact. And so once I quit porn and started realizing that, I actually got down on my knees one day and with her sitting on the couch and begged her forgiveness for doing that to her. And she burst into tears about that. And
That's interesting. So coming from a woman perspective, that she's comparing herself to the woman in porn,
right.
and that she feels bad about herself. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's basically, yeah.
That
So,
she feel bad that she doesn't look and perform like the person in the video, or she feels bad that she's not able to please you. What was her feeling?
well, I think all of the above. Of course, I can't get inside her head for sure, but over the last couple of years in dealing with women in my group and seeing the utter heartbreak of the fact that I have them come into the group and tell me he'll masturbate to porn, but he won't touch me, and see the agony that these women are going through. Is just heartbreaking. And
Interesting, very
yeah,
interesting. Yes, I'm glad I heard that story, and I'm gonna do another episode on women and how they feel, with women's stories with living with men with ED. We'd love to have Heather on the show one day.
I don't know. She's pretty shy. I don't. I'll try, but I'm not going to promise much.
Yeah, yeah,
But
because I just learned something new. She just taught me something new.
yeah.
What you just mentioned.
Well, and also another thing I noticed once I did quit watching the porn all the time is that she became a lot more attractive to me. She was hotter, and I desired her more because I had gotten rid of those other images out of my head and was there with her, present with her during our lovemaking. So
Interesting. Thank
yeah.
you for sharing that. Thank you for
Uh-huh.
sharing that. Yes,
So
yes.
anyway, by the time I'd given myself 4 or 5 of the treatments with the Chinese machine, I was having rock hard erections that were 100% reliable and would last as long as I needed them to, and probably 3 to 5 times a week. It made a huge improvement. I continued the treatments for another probably 10 treatments total with the Chinese machine. And by that time, I had reduced my dosage on my sildenafil by a third, and it was still working. So I was happy. So I kind of took
Now,
a
did you
break.
lose weight too at that time? Have you
What's
really
that?
lost the weight? Were you like around 200 at that
Yeah,
time?
I was 192 when I got the heart,
Oh,
and
okay.
I gained a little bit. I in fact I gained 17 pounds in the first 6 days after the heart because I all of a sudden had an appetite and was just eating everything in sight. I was on a seafood diet. If I saw it, I ate it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
after I stepped on the scales that morning in the hospital and saw I was 17 pounds up, I said, "Well, we got to stop this." And so I started eating more sensibly and had lost, I think, 6 of that by the time I got out of the hospital, and end up losing the rest of. I actually ended up right at about 200 pounds after the heart, and was able to maintain that for at least 3.5, 4 years. It wasn't until I got really bad sick with the parainfluenza 3 back in July of 21, and it that stuff put me down for 6 weeks. And I comfort eat when I'm sick, and so
Gotcha. Right,
that's
right,
the big
right.
challenge I have now is the immune system suppression
Mm-hmm.
that I'm on.
From the heart transplant, right?
Right,
Yeah,
right. And,
right. With
out of
being
the
on the
last eight,
steroid,
out
right?
of that last 18 months, I've been sick probably 12 of it. And so,
Hmm.
of course, we had COVID. I had COVID twice during that time. Part of the problem is now Heather's got grandchildren, and they love Papa and want
Mm-hmm.
to get in Papa's lap and bring me every little bug that's around.
That's right. So you're so
But
you're you're already immunocompromised because of the medicine you have to be
right,
on for the transplant, and then being near kids who,
right,
exposed to 10,000 other viruses. But the point I wanted to kind of point out was that your the ED got better with decreasing porn and really appreciating and being attractive and aroused by your partner because
correct,
you were getting rid of porn at that time. And she probably feel more attractive to you because you were being attractive to her and that she
right,
didn't have this
exactly,
negative
hmm,
connection to the porn. Like you said, you
right,
found that out and so it was like positive feeding on positive, right?
right,
And with her feeling positive, with you feeling attracted to her, being aroused by her, getting rid of the porn, and also like you maintain a pretty healthy weight at that time as
right,
well too. And I mean, if you lost the weight, that means that you're probably eating better and exercising
hmm,
more, right? At that
right,
time,
yeah, yeah,
right? Yeah,
uh-huh.
yeah.
And also about that time, we discovered some tantric sex techniques, meditation
Hmm.
and lingam massage and yoni massage, and that really helped draw us together more too. We
Right. Can you elaborate on that? What is tantric and the two massages you mentioned?
Okay, the tantric sex is based off ancient Hindu. Um, you might have heard of the Kama Sutra.
Hmm.
That's tantric sex, and so there's a meditation where you sit cross-legged close to each other and take each other's hands and do breathing exercises and move your arms and hands together while you're gazing into each other's eyes and move the sexual energy between across between you. And it's really powerful spiritual connection that you can develop.
Now, are you sitting there naked or fully clothed with your
I
partner?
Yeah, I think we did it naked the first time we did it, and it did lead to sex. It doesn't have to
Uh
necessarily have
huh.
to lead to sex,
Uh
but
huh.
in fact, I advise a lot of guys. One of the things you lose when you get ED and you can't have consistent penetrative sex is the connection that you get when you have that penetrative sex. You have this very strong spiritual connection that happens, especially if you eye gaze during the lovemaking. You have a very strong spiritual connection, and when you can't have that penetrative sex anymore, that spiritual connection goes missing, and that's what actually, from my understanding from helping all these women, is they miss that more than they actually miss the sex. They miss that connection with their man. And so by doing the tantric meditation with your woman, you actually can restore that connection, and it calms you down and actually helps with performance anxiety. I think a lot of guys that have mental ED will benefit tremendously from the this tantric meditation.
So you were talking about tantric and meditation. Let's elaborate a little bit more on that.
Okay, yeah. And so that restores that spiritual connection between the man and the woman that goes missing when penetrative sex can't happen. And also, one thing I tell my guys when they come into the group and they can't perform anymore is you've got to step up your foreplay game. and learn to give women orgasms before you even attempt penetration, because that does two things. That makes her happy, and it takes the pressure off of you to perform. So you're more relaxed. So that way you're taking care of her sexual needs by giving her orgasms. You're taking care of her spiritual needs by connecting with her spiritually. So there's guys that are doing this that still can't perform sexually, but their wives are now happy. It's
Absolutely. And
right,
I'm glad you brought that up because you can still please your partner without penetrative sex. And what, like you said, the
right,
eye connection, the using the five senses, the touching, the
yeah,
kissing, the music, and the eyes, the smell, and using more foreplay.
right,
Foreplay is really, it's setting up the stage, and you can please your woman by, oral sex, or even using, gadgets as well too, that will assist and like pleasing her. So a woman can have orgasm without penetrative
right,
sex as well too.
right,
And perhaps while he's doing that, he can also be aroused, and that will help his erection as well,
right.
and
It
ease the
does.
performance anxiety, right?
Right. And I've written a paper that's out on my on in the file section of my big group that's called "How to Make Her Happy When Mister Happy Doesn't Want to Cooperate."
Uh-huh. Yes,
And
yes,
so,
yes, yes. And is that what you mentioned? The meditation, the
right.
tantric. Now, where can somebody find out more about the meditation and the
Well,
tantric
it's very simple
exercises?
if you just go on Google and do a tantric sex for beginners
Mm-hmm.
search. There are videos, hundreds, if not thousands, of videos. Some are better than others, but
Uh-huh.
but yeah, that's where I started when I first started discovering tantric. And then also you asked me to explain the massages.
Yes.
We'll start with the lingam massage. It's where the woman massages the man's pelvic area, not just the penis,
Hmm.
and kind of does it in a worshipful way. It increases the blood flow to the entire area. Actually, you asked me if I was ever able to do it without medicine. The first time my wife tried that on me, we were just kind of experimenting with it. I hadn't taken any meds that night, and everything worked perfectly. So
Hmm.
she was
And
able
that's
to.
all she did? That's all she
That's all.
did was just the lingam massage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Hmm.
and so it's very, men have issues with self-confidence and self-esteem when they have ED, and that is a way a woman can really boost his self-esteem, is if she's worshipful in giving him this lingam massage, because it is very powerful uh, for a man.
Okay, how do you spell that? How do you spell lingam?
Lingam,
Yeah,
lingam.
lingam massage, which is
Yeah,
a woman purposefully massaging the scrotal area as well, or just the pelvic
yeah.
area and
The
the penis and the scrotum and
hmm
the pelvic muscles.
right, yeah.
Okay.
And also, I've worked with several guys that have premature ejaculation. And so I recommend they do that to themselves, especially if a guy's single and, you know, he doesn't have a woman around to do it for him, to do that for themselves and to make it last as long as possible. Because I think a lot of PE comes from guys that fall into the bad habit of when they masturbate, they rush to masturbation and finish in like a minute and a half. And so then when the actual act of making love to a woman happens, they haven't trained their bodies to recognize the signals and to hold off on the orgasms.
Mm.
So the lingam massage can be used by a guy. Also,
On
there's
himself. He
on
can do
himself.
that, right,
And
and on himself to help with
right,
premature
right,
ejaculation.
And
And yeah.
another thing it helps with is what's called death grip syndrome, where a guy has used too strong of a grip for too long during his masturbation and has decreased the sensitivity of his penis. So it can help restore that sensitivity.
Interesting. Well, the background to how that help is that massaging the penis. When you stimulate with massages, you're really stimulating more blood flow to the area,
Right,
and you're massaging the scrotum. That's where the testicles are, which produces testosterone, and then the pelvic area is the pelvic muscles is the ischial cavernosum and the bulbar cavernosum, which are the muscles that kind of goes between your scrotum and your rectum. And those muscles are the one that controls orgasm and ejaculation.
hmm
And they're little thin small muscles that are like a V going down from your scrotum down to your rectum, but they're very very powerful. And those muscles contracted during something called Kegel exercise, Kegel, and how you contract those muscles voluntarily is like when you urinate, you stop your urine and then start your urine, stop your urine, start your urine. That's how you can kind of exercise those muscles. So when you're massaging these muscles, you're bringing more blood flow to these muscles, and that's why. And they help with erection. They help with erection,
right,
help with premature ejaculation, help with orgasm, help with ejaculation. It's almost like, but the most neglected muscle in the body, right? For
right,
a man, it's so neglected because if a man pays attention to the pelvic muscle, the true pelvic muscle, like his bicep, he'll never have any problem with erection because those are the muscles that help actually hold the penis erect as well. And I mean, those are the muscles that not part of the corpus cavernosum, which is the smooth muscle of the penis. So I love it when you mention the lingam massage, which is, a man can do it for himself as well as a partner can
right.
do it. And you can do it almost as a daily routine and combine that with Kegel exercise as well,
hmm
right? Yes.
Right,
Right. There's another massage that you also talk about.
right. Yeah, that's called yoni massage. Yoni is the Sanskrit word for vagina,
It's
and
like Yoni.
yes, and it's again the key to it is doing it in a worshipful manner that isn't necessary, may or may not lead to sex. It's giving your entire attention to pleasuring a woman. And again, you massage the entire pelvic area.
You're massaging the entire the pelvic your pelvic area, the man or the woman?
The woman,
The
the man
woman. Okay.
massages the entire pelvic area. Usually, some kind of coconut oil or almond oil as a lubricant, and pay attention and like massage the inner labia, just little you know massages, and just in do the entire area, and then I usually end up inserting two fingers and going in for the G spot, which is about 2 inches inside on the roof of the vagina, and that can make for some very powerful orgasms in the woman, massaging the G spot.
Yeah. So that's yoni massage. So that's
Yoni
when
massage.
you're massaging
Yeah.
her,
Right.
and the lingam is she's massaging you, or you can even
Right.
also do self massage. That's not to say a woman can also do her own yoni massage,
Right. And
as well.
you guys can come into erectile dysfunction discussion and hit me up. I've got the links in a Google Keep file that I can just copy and paste to you, and get
Mm-hmm.
those links to you for all of these things we've discussed. So
Right, right, right.
yes.
But these are the things that like nobody tell you about, right? So
Right.
these are things that
Well,
you just kind of find out like on like you did like on your own, but it's so powerful, like meditation.
Hmm.
We always think about, oh, meditation, can you go yoga or like that, but you can do
These are real life
meditation. It's all about
applications.
breathing. Yes, it's just like breathing. That
Yeah.
what it help you with your sex life. I mean, how
Hmm.
good is that? Those muscles that I mentioned, pelvic muscle, you never exercise it, but you can easily exercise it while you're urinating. And if you do that, it help you with your erection, help you with lasting longer, and help you with ejaculation. Why wouldn't you do it? Well, every man should be doing this
Right.
every
Yeah.
day.
Well, we all tend to be lazy, and sometimes we just got to dig a little deeper for that motivation. And it took me recently getting told that I put on about 25 pounds over the last 18 months, and I got told that it was starting to dilate one of the aortas to my new heart. And so that has got me motivated to get back on my exercise bicycle, and I've lost 5 pounds now. And
Congratulations,
yeah,
congratulations.
part of the
Yeah.
problem is now I do have low testosterone. My testosterone before I got the para-influenza 3 was 450, and now it's about 230.
Mm,
So over the
yeah.
last year and a half, all my illnesses have driven that testosterone, and just being a couch potato because I didn't feel like
Right.
doing
Well, it's
anything.
also your age as well too,
Right,
and also being on the immunosuppressant, the medication that suppresses the rejection of your heart will sometime cause some lower testosterone as well
right.
too.
Yeah, yeah. I've looked up the
And
side effects, and a lot of my meds do statin drugs I take for my to keep my cholesterol perfect.
mhm,
Also
mhm.
lower testosterone. So, but that's another thing I found is I may not have the drive to make love to my wife anymore, but I can use my mind to decide I want to make love to my wife and follow through with that act rather than make having to, oh, I got to have you now. It's I want to have you now. And so we've been
What's the
able to.
difference? What's the difference?
The
I
difference
want to have
is
you now. I have to have you now.
the have to have you now is the biological, male's response to the testosterone that he's driven, to copulate. uh, where the I want you now is I have decided that I enjoy making love to you. And so therefore I am going to do it even though my body's not telling me I have to do it. So our sex life is virtually not dropped off at all when I'm
Hmm.
healthy.
Right, right, right,
And
right. And I love that because what you're stressing is the power of the mind, the
right,
power of the mind and how it can really drive everything. We already know that you have a powerful mind that help you come out from the depth of death. And you decide to, I'm going to go out my own way, and that has helped you actually go on to the next step. But also the power of the mind in contributing to how you, I mean, you certainly have, severe medical condition, being on multiple medication for your transplant, and
right,
anyone that has transplant, I know I've taken care of some, yeah, several patients with kidney transplant, as well as liver transplant and heart transplant. I'm familiar with the medication that you're on, and they're not mild medication.
they are
They're
not nice medications.
strong. No, they're strong medication and with a lot of side effects. But the point I'm trying to make is that the mind is a larger sexual organ. If we're just
Right,
looking at sexuality here, and it's a larger sexual organ, it's not your penis, it's your mind, and it starts in the mind, which then drive everything. And Galen already said that he has low testosterone, but that hasn't really affected his libido, nor his wanting to have intercourse with his wife, because his mind decide that
right,
I that I want to be attracted to you, I want to connect with you, and I want to have sexual activity with you. And that is kind of like the rev up, that the rev up everything,
hmm,
like the hormones, like in the nerve, and
right.
your heart
Well,
and your blood
and
vessels as well.
I also continued uh, as in mid-April of 2020, I I upgraded to a clinical grade shockwave home shockwave therapy unit, and gave myself another 12 treatments with it, which reduced my sildenafil by another third. So,
Right.
and then I was up to making love to my wife 4 to 6 times a week, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes twice in a day, which is kind of unheard of at uh, 66 years old.
Right, 60 is 66 and a heart transplant. But I think that with you, along with some of the treatment you have, but even the trachea treatment you had, even in a case where with mild ED, it may not even help. As in ED, it's a multimodality approach
Right,
of mind and body. It's not just doing one thing. And one thing I want to stress is that, guys, if you have ED, it's just not one thing that's gonna solve your problem. It really starts with working within yourself first, and asking yourself questions. Are you doing porn? Are you smoking? Are you drinking a lot of alcohol? That it creates inflammation. And what's your weight? What's your diet? Are you sleeping? Just kind of taking that and then using your mind to start the arousal process, and not like, well, you're with her, you got to get an erection within like 2 minutes.
right,
It's just sometimes your ability as a man that can depend upon how fast you get an erection. Sometimes like you mentioned, there's a focus on, okay, I got to get this erection, got to be rock hard, or else I can't perform. But if he spent time with foreplay and with connection with his partner, and mutual pleasing, that itself will help with the
right.
erection as well,
Right, and
too.
that's one of the thing I tell, especially the young men that have come into the group, and they're addicted to porn, and they've basically masturbated to the point that they don't work anymore. Sometimes even they're not able to masturbate anymore because their erections just are that bad, and definitely cannot perform with a woman. And I tell my guys, first of all, you need to unlearn everything porn has taught you about making love to a woman, because
Hmm.
porn is the worst teacher there is for what a woman wants. You know, porn. I get a little crude here, but porn teaches fucking, not lovemaking, and
Hmm.
there's a huge difference. So
Right, right. That's interesting way of saying that. And it's also fantasy. It's like the movie Marvel. It's superhero, it's fantasy. It's not real life because it's a movie. That means they can cut, they can, paste, they can film over 3 days, and it looks like, they're doing it, for the 20, 30 minutes, but it could go on for days at a time. You just don't know. And it's
right,
fantasy also. And you don't know what else, what other medication, what other things they're taking. So that is something to consider as well. But you mentioned like a lot of stuff that the massage and the breathing, the meditation, the connection with the partner. What I want to know is, okay, how would you describe 3 to 5 feelings that you have when you have ED? What do these men feel? What are the feelings they're feeling?
well,
The
you know,
feeling, the thinking.
our society has conditioned us to the point that we tie that our manhood to our erections. And so that's probably one of the first things that a lot of men feel is, I'm not a man anymore. And that's the farthest thing from the truth. Yeah, I mean, if you have diabetes, does that make you not a man? you know, Diabetes is treatable, ED is treatable. So your manhood's not involved here. You can still be the man that your woman needs, even if your penis doesn't work at all. I tell my guys, hey, there's women that love people that don't have penises.
Hmm.
So a penis is not necessary for a woman to love you.
Well said. Well said. Yes.
Yeah, I'm stuck there.
What other emotion
Oh, okay.
that the man
Well, yeah,
experience and feel when he has ED?
embarrassment. The first Another thing I've learned from 2 years of working with women in the group is one of the first things the woman feels is it's my fault. He's not attracted to me anymore. And then we're so ashamed that we don't reach out to her and say, no, it's not you. My body isn't working like it's supposed to. And so, unfortunately, a lot of men at that point withdraw all their affection from their women and won't even touch them anymore. And the women are just agonizing because they need that affection from their man, and he's afraid to give it to her because he doesn't want to get her going and then not be able to satisfy her. And so again, that comes back around to learning your foreplay, learning other ways to pleasure a woman, and making that spiritual connection with her.
Exactly. What other emotion? What is the man thinking? Is there I think, oh my God, my life is over?
A, a,
What is he
I
thinking?
never experienced that because like I say, I was very aggressive with treating my ED. Sex was so important in my life that I wasn't gonna let ED stop me if I could at all possibly do it. But there is a component that I have probably saved the lives of 10 young men over the last couple of years that were literally ready to go kill themselves until I was able to talk with them at length in private messaging and explain to them that no, let's not use a permanent fix for a temporary problem. So
Mm,
yes, it can be cause a man to be suicidal. And there's some
right.
men that I've had to work with for weeks and weeks, slowly getting them up out of that depression cycle. A lot of them will say, "Oh, thank you, bless you." you know, you've saved my life. And one
Yeah.
of my best stories is a young man that was like that. He lived in Germany. His mother was Pakistani and his father was German, and so he was in a arranged marriage situation where he was supposed to get married in 3 months, and he was very very suicidal when I was working with him on the group, and then he just disappeared for a week, and I'm assuming the worst, that he's killed himself. But he came back in a week and he says, I've just spent the whole week in my room thinking about what you said to me, and my erections came back. So he had just worried himself into the point that he was producing so much cortisol that
Yeah.
he could not
Yep.
physically get an erection
Hmm.
because he had worried himself to that point. And
Right.
I worked with
Hmm.
him for another 2 or 3 months, and we ended up getting him on some temporarily on
Uh-huh.
some Cialis, and he got married and soon figured out that he didn't need the Cialis anymore, and
Hmm. Right.
they just had their first child about 3 months ago. So,
Oh, that's wonderful for that man to
mhm.
have met you and to be able to be exposed to that. But
Well, and
sometimes
that
the psychological component is there along with the physical component, but then they play with each other in a
right,
vicious cycle. The psychological meaning, the anxiety, the performance anxiety feed, and then that create more stress, and the stress create physical changes in the body, which like increasing cortisol, lower testosterone, and creating inflammation, which then worsen the ED prop, which then contribute to the physical part. And then
right.
and so it's just a vicious
I call it
cycle.
the ED tailspin. Your
Yes.
plane is in a tailspin, and you've got to figure out how to pull it up out of that tailspin before you
Right,
crash.
right, and sometimes taking an ED med is actually more effective for men that have the psychological ED because it gives
Right.
them that confidence, and then once he get that confidence, he can kind of work through it, and then to be able to get off the medication.
Yeah, and that's always my goal is to try to get them off the medication once they've got that confidence back. But
Wonderful. So, what advice would you give a man that having had ED yourself and gone through what you have and working and having the Facebook group and working with the men here? What advice would you have for a guy that just, starting to notice that he's having ED and feeling really worried about it?
well, we covered it a little bit. The very first piece of advice is do not withdraw affection from your woman. That's a one guaranteed way to lose her. If you're showing her affection and working on pleasuring her, she'll stick with you forever. I have found the number one thing a woman needs in a relationship is to feel cherished. If she knows that you're that she's your treasure, she will not leave you, because that is the number one thing she needs in her life to be happy, is to feel treasured and cherished. And so that's the first thing, is do not pull back and go into your shell and try to deal with this on your own. She is your helpmate, and she's anxious to help you. And so, and then of course, the second one is to immediately go see a doctor to find out if there's underlying conditions that are causing this. 15% of men who develop ED will have a heart attack or stroke within 5 years of their developing ED. My stroke was 8 years after I developed ED. I had a stroke. And so, even though I didn't show any signs of cardiovascular issues, I still had a stroke at 52 years old.
Wow. Right, right.
And
And and
so,
and you and you were one of those statistics there. So ED is really the warning sign that your body's out of balance, that there's something going on with your blood flow that is contributing to the problem. So get blood work, because blood work first of all, is covered by insurance, especially to why the blood work, to look at the blood sugar, look at the cholesterol, look at inflammation markers, and those are the things that is really first come. And then when you go see the doctor, get your blood pressure checked, because I can't tell you how many times I see a patient and for ED, and we do blood work, and he hasn't had blood work done in like 5 years, and newly diagnosed, diabetes. His blood sugar is like 300. His hemoglobin A1C is 12. His blood pressure is like 200 over 150, and his heart rate's high, and his cholesterol is, 300 or more, and LDL is way high. So these things that it's actually reversible. They're
mhm,
reversible. So ED is reversible if you know what's causing it and you
right,
want to catch it early. And that's where you and I have so much things in common, is that, we know that, if you know what to do in the beginning, you can really reverse ED, and not to have to
right,
be exposed to have a heart attack, 10 years down the road, or have more heart issues 10 years down the road. So,
right.
what other advice would you advise?
Well, and
For blood
that I
work,
would say the
see your
third piece
doctor.
kind of ties to the second piece. Is third piece is don't buy the snake oil out there.
Yeah,
There are, for every one good supplement, there are 100 that are just trying to take advantage of your desperation. So find a doctor that you trust, or you know we've got a holistic nurse in our group that has donated her time to the group, and she works with men with their supplements, but she works with their doctors with their blood tests to find out what they're missing before she ever suggests a supplement to them. And
right, right,
that's the
exactly.
important part. By taking a supplement, you're going BB hunting. You're going elephant hunting with a BB gun.
You're right, but
So
I like that metaphor. BB hunting, be was an elephant. It's really a multimodality approach. All right,
right,
and oftentimes, he can probably resolve it himself by really, like what the factors that we discussed about, decreasing stress, stop smoking, stop porn, exercise, and eat a better diet. And, oftentimes you start doing that and just getting your mind in the right place,
right,
and it will improve, and
right.
as well too.
Well, and
So
that would be my fourth suggestion, is relax.
yeah,
you know, maybe find you some meditation on your own, to do on your own, to get, because the more you get stressed, the more your body produces cortisol, and the less your erections want to work properly. So you've got to figure out a way to calm yourself down, and maybe not take yourself quite so seriously in this. And I know that's awful hard to do because it's such an integral part of our maleness, but it takes that. Even with guys with physical ED, the mental part plays a huge part in it, because Even though there's a physical reason, as soon as that physical reason happens once, then the next time he might be that physical reason might not be prevalent at that moment, but his mental health has gone down, and so he's in that ED tailspin
Yes,
because of his physical.
the ED tailspin of the both the worry about whether he can perform or not and so forth. I can't tell you how many times I work with my patient and their erection is back again, but they're still worried about it. They're still worried about whether is it
Mhm.
gonna work? Oh my God, I'm 85%, hard. I'm not 100%. I'm not rock hard. It's just like the more you worry about it, your erection will actually get worse if you keep
Right.
worrying about it all the time, right? It's kind of like when you go take a test. You're gonna go take the test with the attitude that, hey, I study. I'm gonna be able to handle it. You don't go in there, take the test, and go, I'm gonna fail. Even though I study or like that.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
yeah, I present it in the same way. So, having said that, oh my goodness, I've learned some stuff from just talking to you today, and I appreciate your being here,
Well, I
Gaylen.
that's one thing, having been given a new heart that's given me another 20 plus years with my soulmate, and then having my erectile function restored with shockwave therapy to where, at 66, I'm able to make love just pretty much anytime my 66-year-old body will let me. uh, that's why I tell people my challenge now is getting this 66-year-old body up to keep up with my erection capability. And
Mhm.
so after those two things, I just feel so obligated to pay these blessings forward and help other guys. And so, anybody that needs me, you look me up in the group. You can PM me. I'll be there for you.
Right.
Uh,
Well, his Facebook group is erectile dysfunction discussion, and the other one is erectile dysfunction.
they're both named
Right.
erectile
Oh,
dysfunction discussion.
okay.
I didn't found either one of the groups, but I got so active in both of them that they eventually the administrators retired and gave me the groups. So they're both
Right.
named exactly the same. The big group is the one with all capital E's, and the other group is all lowercase erectile
Oh,
dysfunction discussion.
okay. So they're
That's the
both they're
difference. The
both
only
named the
difference
same,
between the two groups.
right? I
Either
got
way,
it.
you'll get to me.
I'm a member. I'm a member of. I joined in both groups as well, and the part is to kind of learn, and
Yeah,
so
the big
the
group is
more
where I
the more
have
I know
most
what
of
you guys are thinking, the better
yeah,
I'm able
the
to
big
serve
group
you
is where I
guys.
have most of my documents and little writings. I've got a paper on the link between ED and porn. My how to make her happy when Mr. Happy doesn't cooperate is in the file section in that group. There's also writings from some of the women in the group. I've asked them to write their stories and write how it affects them, and those are posted in the group in the files section. And so that file section is a gold mine
Right,
of
right. Absolutely. I've seen that. And I also posted my Good Morning Wood Smoothie
yes.
recipe in there as well too. Well, thank you for being with me today.
You're quite welcome.
And guys, I hope you get something out of this and I will see you in the next episode.
Okay. Thanks, Dr. Ann.
Hello there. Want an amazing sex life? This free gift is going to give you more sex by helping you get harder and lasting longer. Let's talk about the most sensitive subject, the effect that aging has on your sex life. If you're over 40, there's about 67% chance that you have to deal with one or more of these issues. You sometimes go soft in the middle of sex. You sometimes have trouble lasting long enough to climax. Your erection just doesn't feel as hard as it used to be, and your penis is not as sensitive as it used to be. You cannot reach orgasm or ejaculate. You sometimes have trouble getting an erection. These things lead to frustration and embarrassment when you cannot please your partner. My name is Dr. Ann Truong, and I've been treating men for issues like this for over 25 years. As a board certified medical doctor who specializes in men's health, I helped over 7,000 men reverse the effect of ED. As a way to introduce you to the ED treatment that I offer, I want to give you the most incredible free gift ever. But don't let the fact that it's free gift fool you. This powerful gift will help you get harder and stay and last longer and may just revolutionize your sex life. making sex more exciting, more thrilling, and an amazing experience again. How is that? Now, here's what you're going to get in this most incredible free gift. Number one, a good morning wood smoothie recipe. This is my specially formulated antioxidant recipe that will help you get harder and stay and stimulating more blood flow. It is formulated to increase your nitrous oxide level, which is one of the biggest keys to making you harder and firmer more often and will also help you last longer. It is filled with lots of greens that create more nitrous oxide in your blood. This smoothie will give you that morning wood effect and will also make you harder on demand when you need it most. And you'll see the effect in about several weeks. Number two, nitrous oxide testing strip. You will also get 2 of these strips, which you will use along with simple instructions to test your nitrous oxide level in your saliva. Nitrous oxide is a gas in your body and is required for good blood flow to the organ. The strip can determine if your nitrous oxide are deficient, which can help us advise you on the best way to reverse your ED. Even more important, since ED is an early warning sign of problems with circulation and heart health, this can also be a great way to prevent heart-related problems such as strokes and heart attacks. Number three, and the best part of all, a 30-day free trial access to the Modern Man Club. As part of our mission to make men hard again, we launched the Modern Man Club as a way to provide education and support to a community of men who's on the path to reversing their ED, with pre-recorded and live session being offered every week. I will help men regain sexual health through training, support. I will be there all the way with you to hold your hand through, so that way you can overcome ED and have your best sex life. Members rave about this session and the sense of community they gain by being a member of the Modern Man Club. And all you have to do is to say maybe to this offer. And once you say maybe, you will be on your way to a more fulfilling and exciting sex life. So all you have to do is fill down the form below, and then I will see you on the inside. Thanks for listening to the Sexual Health for Men podcast. If you love this episode, then please take a screenshot on your phone and post it on Facebook, Instagram, or wherever you post. And be sure to tag me and let me know why you like this episode and what you like to hear in the future. That will help me know what's great for you, and I would love to give you the most incredible free gift designed to help you improve performance quickly. Go to my website at sexualhealthformenpodcast.com to get the book, The 5 Common Costly Mistakes Men Make When Facing ED. I would appreciate it if you subscribe, leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen, and just know that you can have sexual vitality for life. I appreciate you. Until next time.